Hello, good people, and welcome to Hillbilly Cat History. Signed, sealed, remembered, wedding ceremony. Today, we're going to make it into that special executive suite where there's only a few people at, probably around 20, that get to see Elvis Presley get married. And we're going to get there right after we come back from this song called Threads and Dreams. Hello, Keith. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate seeing you here. Hi, Colleen. Thank you for coming. Appreciate seeing you here, too.
Black pants in the sun, rode horses through silence, then golf carts for fun. A ranch just 10 miles from the mansion's bright gate, where the myth met the morning and time learned to wait. George fixed the brickwork, the pipes in the ground, lit PP on shirt where no spotlight was found. Donna kept diaries, snapshots ahead of a father who labored, of a myth made by man. He didn't ask for gold, didn't dream of a crown, just a place to be still when the world spun around. In the hands of the quiet, in the stitch of a sea, he carried the weight of a half-finished dream. The holster was worn, the leather was cracked, BP etched in thread, no glory attached. Mike shaped the saddle, the belt and the law, so Elvis could ride through a myth he adored. He didn't ask for gold, didn't dream of a crown, just a place singing still, that courage spun out. In the hang out the fight, that mistakes on the sea, we drained the weight of the hearts and his teeth. Snowstorms in March, to fairgrounds at night. He chased peace in motion and shadow and light. And Priscilla saw him, silhouette aglow, breathing in twilight, steady and slow. He didn't ask for gold, didn't dream of a throne, just laughter at breakfast, a place to call home. In the hush of the ranch, in the hands of the crew, they found what was real, and he gave it to you.
Thank you all for gathering here at Hillbilly Cat History, where we remember together and listen for the echoes. And today it's the echoes of the wedding ceremony. We've worked hard to get here through several episodes, and now it's gonna happen. And Keith says that the Colonel made some power play moves with EP's wedding. Well, that's the way Priscilla tells it. That's the way some of the guys saw it. Priscilla, she also cast a little shade on Elvis, saying that he might have been using the Colonel as an excuse. But what Priscilla says is it wasn't her fault. Marty says it wasn't his fault. Joe says there just wasn't enough room. So I feel like maybe there's some blame to go around. But we're going to find out what else is happening. Red, he's not going to be at this party. Some people say he went back to his room and he sits this one out. Other people say he kicked in the door to his room at the Aladdin Hotel, stormed out, and flew back to LA. Well, we're going to find out what he really did. And Keith says that the colonel wanted to trim down the staff. The colonel or Elvis? Because it might have been either one. And it could have been Priscilla. But Colleen says that's what she thinks too, that it was the colonel. Now here's where we're at. The Aladdin Hotel and Casino. We can see that it's a much more modest structure than we may have imagined. This is no skyscraper. This is not a multi-story building. This is maybe 2, possibly 3 stories, depending on exactly how you might count it. But I do have a new view, which is actually almost exactly the same view, slightly shifted. So we've just moved kind of to the left of the or to the right of the previous picture. It's kind of like we were standing in the street in the previous picture, and now we're standing more at the edge of the sidewalk in the parking lot. We're still looking from the same direction. We're still seeing the same sign. It has new words on it. Now it's got Minsky's Burlesque 69. I'm not sure what year this picture's taken from. There's a few vehicles in it that indicate it might be late 70s, early 80s from the trucks. And there's a van, but again, those are shapes that might go all the way back to the mid 60s. And there's a much older Corvette sitting right in the middle of the front of the parking lot. But again, you can see this is fairly modest structure to what we would think of today as a Las Vegas casino. And Colleen says it was Elvis's wedding. I'm sure the colonel could have found a bigger room to fit everybody. There was one right next to it. They're actually in a room that's adjoining. There's just a door between them. The room they get married in has a door to the banquet room where everybody fits in. So all they had to do was move over a few steps and they could have been in a room with everybody. Now the room would have been set up to start eating directly afterwards, but I think even that could have been logistically overcome. So yes, could they have had it in the Aladdin in a room where everybody could have fit? Yes, they could have. So who made the decision to have it in this room? It's just not clear. People blame it on the colonel, but the people who blame it on the colonel, I think a lot of people, a lot of fans might say that those people themselves are not trustworthy. And therefore it becomes a muddled mess as to who actually made this determination. And then on top of that, made a decision, hey, we're going to cut people out. And Marion says that she thinks so too, that they could have had it in a bigger room. Absolutely, they could have. It was right next to them. But I'm going to give you a little bit of history about this property. Since we're here, and we spent so many days here, even though Elvis only spends a few hours in reality. This property was initially the site of the Tally Ho Hotel. And that was opened in 1962 by a toy manufacturer, a man who made toys. And that man's name was Edwin Lowe. Now, his hotel did not feature a casino. This was a major business error in Las Vegas, Nevada. Because without the casino, he had nothing to draw people to his hotel, and it floundered, and he was not able to financially keep it alive. So this is 5 years before Elvis gets married. That means that this property, it's fairly new. So it is probably pretty swanky inside. I mean, this is kind of top of the line. It's not brand new, but it's probably been refurbished a couple of times as we hear the rest of the story, all within 5 years. The year after it opens, Edwin's not able to keep it open, not able to keep ownership of it anyway. So he sells it, and whoever buys it, they rename it the King's Crown Tally-Ho, and they announce plans to add a casino. However, they fail to get a gambling license from the Nevada Gaming Control Board. You have to fill out a bunch of forms. You have to pass some kind of, they're trying to keep out organized crime. So you have to pass some kind of background checks. You probably have to maybe, I don't know, at that time, maybe there was bribes going on to Nevada Gaming Control Board, and I don't know. I have no idea. This is a great time to mention that this program is for entertainment purposes only. I bring you the source material that I find, but all the commentary is just my opinion. So feel free to put your opinions into the chat, into the comments, and all opinions are welcome. We'll sort them all out, but everybody gets to leave with their own opinion, and we all get to see the source material together. So after it was the King's Crown Tally-Ho, now they can't get this license, so their plans falter, they fall through. That's when Milton Prell comes into the picture. And he purchases the property and reopens it on April 1st, 1966. So he's only owned it slightly more than 1 year when Elvis gets married. He's owned it a year and a month. He has, or at least he's had it open for a year and a month. He's probably owned it a little bit longer because he remodeled it or rethemed it. I'm not sure what the difference is there. I guess probably a little less construction. But he rethemed it as the Arabian Nights. And I believe he built this big sign that we see. I mean, I'm going to have to guess that nothing like this existed before he took over the property and reopened it as the Aladdin. And that when he reopened it, it included a casino, and we can see the word casino spelled out in big letters on the entrance. Hi, chillin' in Canada. Hi, Luann. Thank you both so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. I hope I'm not missing anybody. If I did, I absolutely did not mean to. Sometimes I get wrapped up telling these stories. But he's now got this thing open. It's 1966. And then a year later. Now, what he's added to this is the casino. He's got multiple restaurants inside. He's got a showroom that's got 500 seats. So this is a little bitty building, it looks like to me, but he's got 500 seat theater in there. And he's also got a golf course right next door that he's put in. So Milton Prell puts a big investment into this thing, but he does manage to acquire that gaming license and opens, and it's a casino, and this is the Aladdin when Elvis gets married. And Chillin says the magic lamp atop the signage. This is during a magic period of signage in America. They used to make the most wonderful signage. Everything is extremely generic and kind of a square or a rectangle now with a bunch of words on it. And now the fancy thing is to put like a big television screen up and things move, right? Or they shift from one picture to another. But back then, I mean, this is all electricity and wires run through a bunch of metal. And then it lights up beautifully in the night. And of course, it does have that beautiful Aladdin's lamp at the top that Aladdin would rub and the genie would come out. And maybe the genie's going to come out here at Elvis's wedding. Yes, Luann, that is what the building looks like. She's asking if that's it. It's not what you imagined, is it? It just, you look at it and you don't even fit it into the story for a while. You really have to kind of absorb the picture to understand this is where Elvis got married. This building is gone. They pulled it down in, I want to say the 1990s, and they rebuilt a new giant modern type Las Vegas building, which is still there. And it was called the Aladdin, but it eventually closed, went out of business, and it was rebought, and I believe it's the Planet Hollywood now. But it was a famous, famous place. And Dee Presley says, and Dee Presley was Elvis Presley's stepmother. She was married to his father, Vernon Presley. She says Elvis was decidedly fidgety that day, but overjoyed. Priscilla was just radiant in her white organdy dress. Nobody could take their eyes off of her. And in this picture, Priscilla's in that dress, but she's only got eyes for Elvis, at least in this picture. It's Elvis, it's Priscilla, it's George Klein, and I still don't know who this guy is that's next to George Klein. Some people have guessed that it's Gene Smith. Red did say Gene Smith is here. Haven't verified one way or the other yet, but that is not Gene Smith. He does resemble Gene Smith a little bit. I mean, I could see why somebody would say that, but I know Gene's face, and that's not it. At least I don't think so. If you think it's Gene Smith, let me know. I could be wrong. I'm certainly not an expert at visual identification. And we have looked at this picture before, and we have all noticed that George looks really tired or sick or something. He's got a lot of dark circles around his eyes. And Priscilla's gown is a white organza. Now, Dee called it an organdy. And to tell the truth, I know nothing about clothing. And I have no idea what that word, one way or the other, means. I don't know whether Dee got it right or this other description. I think it's organza. And I could be butchering the pronunciation as well. So if you know stuff about clothes, let us know. And it's trimmed in seed pearls with lace sleeves and a full train. A 3/4 length tulle veil, and that's Tulle. Ken, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I guess it's describing that kind of see-through fabric that we can see her veil is made out of. But it's held on by a crown of rhinestones. And in this picture, you can see the crown. That's right on the top of her head. and that's holding her veil on. And Keith says, I'm surprised Billy Smith wasn't in any of the wedding pictures. Huh. We're going to get to that, Keith. I think we're going to find out why. We're going to have to piece a couple of things together, but I think we're going to figure it out. And Colleen says, I think it's Priscilla's brother. I think it is too. I think his name is Don. Now, somebody told me that Priscilla's got 3 brothers. I think there's only one at the wedding. I think it's whichever one was young enough to still be at home with the parents. But again, I'm not sure. Obviously, I'm not even sure if she has 3 brothers, so I got to do some more reading up on Priscilla now that she's entered the official family of the Presleys. And Chillin' in Canada says organza is a sheer, lightweight, and finely woven fabric traditionally made from silk, but now commonly produced using synthetic fibers like polyester or nylon. So, Chillin', do you think that this is a silk organza, or do you think it's a synthetic fiber? I would immediately say silk, but at this moment in time, in 1967, synthetic fibers were a new hot item. Not everybody had synthetic fibers at this moment. It's possible, and Priscilla, I believe, designed this gown herself. So she may have picked out a hot new kind of material to make this out of. But then again, she may have gone completely traditional. I don't know. Pat says that she had mentioned that the other day. Thank you so much, Pat. I appreciate you being here. And Priscilla's sister, Michelle, and Elvis, they had to assist Priscilla with her gown's train because it was 7 feet long. That's a pretty long train on a wedding gown. That's taller, that's longer than Priscilla is tall by quite a bit. That's almost 2 Priscillas tall. And Mayman, who is the reporter, who ends up in the banquet room, and she's at the press conference. So she's able to take a good long look at Priscilla, and she describes the gown for everybody to read about in a magazine piece that gets published, I believe, in June. It's about a month later. And May says it was a long bouffant with long sleeves and a yoke of seed pearls. On her natural dark brunette waving hair, which she wore long and soft, sat a tiny bridal tiara of rhinestones. It held the 3-foot-long bridal veil in place. And so I had just finished reading a description that came from another book that told us what Priscilla looked like. But it wasn't someone that was there telling us what Priscilla looked like. It was written by an author in a book describing the event. But I think we could see that that description comes directly from May Mann, because she was there and then printed this out, published it in a magazine from the time period. So the author of the other book got a hold of this article, same way I did. I'm showing you the quote. And then they rewrote it as, just didn't attribute it to her directly. We surely attributed it to her in the notes and the back of the book and all that good stuff. But this is how the stories move from having been told by somebody, from us being able to say, oh, this person said this, and then they kind of move out into this world of their own where they're being restated as facts instead of this was this particular person's perception of that day. Now, May's is very detailed and seems to have a lot of facts. But she says Buffon and doesn't say anything about the organza. Right? So she doesn't have all the facts. But a lot of her facts, or what people believe that she said was true, they make it into other stuff. Now, in this case, it looks from the pictures like everything she says is true. But I just found that to be a neat look at how the words of one person can start to ripple forward within the myth, and they'll be repeated over and over into other books, and the original source has been lost, but no one questions what's being said. And Priscilla is carrying a bouquet of pink rosebuds and a tiny white Bible, which May thought may have belonged to Elvis's mother, Gladys. Now, I've seen that detail elsewhere in other books, although I can't place it at this moment, about the Bible that she's carrying being Elvis's mother's. And I'm wondering if that detail came from May Mann in her article. But May had no way to know if this truly was Gladys's Bible. This was May's belief. And she doesn't say why she believes that. She doesn't say that she was told by Priscilla, or that Elvis said, hey, this was my mom's Bible. For some reason, she attaches the Bible to Gladys, prints it, and then I've seen this other places, and I just accepted it as true. Now I don't know. Now I have to question it. Now, in this particular picture, Elvis's tuxedo just looks black, right? Like you don't see any design or anything on it. And we're about to get to this, which is Elvis's wedding ring. Have any of you ever seen Elvis's wedding ring before? Let me know in the comments. Marty Lacker says, I had designed Elvis's tuxedo, and one of the studio tailors had made it. The tailor kept the secret and did an exceptional job to make the tuxedo come out special. Elvis was indeed a stunning groom. Well, I think we'd all agree with Marty from the pictures that we've seen that Elvis was indeed a stunning groom, and that the tuxedo is exceptional. We're going to see some more pictures of it, and you're going to... we have already seen some pictures as well that showed the brocade much better. A violin, a string bass, and an accordion trio. They played Love Me Tender softly in the background as the justice moved forward with the ceremony, which happens just after 9:30 a.m. at the Aladdin. And Luann says that Priscilla didn't involve her brother and sister in her interviews or anywhere. I'm not very familiar with them either, to tell you the truth, Luann, so I would say that's correct. I don't think I've seen them in interviews and stuff. And Colleen says that the ring is gorgeous. Pat says that she's never seen it. And Keith says, what a ring. And Marion says that she's never seen Elvis's wedding ring and that it's beautiful. And Colleen says that Elvis was a stunning everything. And Pat says she wonders if Elvis wore that ring after the divorce. There's an interesting story there, Pat. And Colleen says Pat, Bill, and Joe said he lost it on the ranch. Colleen, there's another interesting story there. But if he had lost it on the ranch, where did I get this picture from? So I can absolutely guarantee that those stories that he lost it on the ranch are not true. Now, Colleen, if you remember which EMF episode or EFM episode Billy gave that story in, because I remember it very clearly. And he said that Elvis had knotted it onto a handkerchief around his neck, and then it had fallen off. I cannot, they don't name their episodes very well, in my opinion. Of course, I don't name my episodes very well either in those kind of terms. And I cannot remember what episode that was in. If you happen to remember, or if any of you do, please let me know. Put it into the chat or put it into the comments later, because I'm looking for that episode right now, because I found this ring. And so I want to listen to that again. But back to the wedding, where Elvis is about to put this ring on his hand, or I guess maybe Priscilla is. Marty Lacker says the marriage ceremony was performed by Judge David Zinoff, who was a justice of the Nevada Supreme Court. This is a very important person, and he has come to marry Elvis. And I bet he's tickled pink to do it. But I don't know. I really don't know anything about Judge David Zinoff. But Marty says the ceremony was a simple affair held in the private suite of Melton Prell. So this private suite, again, is right next door, with a door into the banquet area. It's referred to or described as adjoining. So when something is adjoining, in my mind, there is a door between them. So I have to guess that they're right next door to each other, and they even have a door between them. This room where Elvis gets married and this banquet hall. And D. Presley says Joe Esposito and Marty Lacker were co-best men, and Richard Davis, Charlie Hodge, George Klein, and Jerry Schilling, all old friends and associates, were also there. So I think someone yesterday mentioned that Jerry didn't seem upset. Well, according to D, he's in here. Now, is he really in here? I don't know. We don't know yet. What we know is that D says that he is. So we know George is in there because we saw a picture of him. We have seen a picture of Charlie Hodge. And again, I think he's in this room with Elvis while he's getting married. Richard Davis, I don't know. We haven't seen him. People keep mentioning him. We haven't seen him. And Jerry Schilling, we know he's there, but when Jerry told us the story, it sounded like he was told he wasn't allowed to go to the wedding. But maybe he was just saying that some of the guys couldn't go to the wedding. I'm going to have to go back and review Jerry's stuff now. Do any of you remember if Jerry specifically said that he was not allowed into the ceremony? And Luann says that Richard Davis has been mentioned a lot of times. And Keith said, what are Billy and Joe Smith doing during this big day? Good question, Keith. I mean, we know that Billy had polished up those suede shoes that are the wrong shoes to go with the tux. And that Elvis said, hey, it's all okay. Nobody's going to be looking at my feet anyway. And so Billy and Joe are there. Now, Joe is about 20 or 21 years old at this point because she's roughly a year and a half younger than Priscilla. But they're here, and I believe they're also in this room. Pat says that she likes Charlie Hodge. He was an awful nice guy, is what everybody said. And Colleen says that Keith, they said they were gambling. Colleen, you've been watching all those EFMs, and those were years ago, and I thought everybody forgot about them by now. But yes, that is what they said. They're off gambling. We're going to get to that part of the story. Let's see who's next. It's Joe Esposito. Joe says the ceremony performed by Judge David Zinoff, a justice of the Nevada Supreme Court, took place at 10 the next morning in Milton Prell's apartment in the hotel. Now, we've heard that it was at 9:30, but Joe says 10 o'clock. And the guests included Milton and his family, the Colonel and his wife. His wife would be Marie. Colonel's wife's name is Marie. So the guests included Milton and his family, the Colonel and his wife, Colonel Ballou and his wife. Colonel Ballou is, and again, maybe I'm pronouncing that name wrong. That is Priscilla's father and her mother, Priscilla's brother Don, who I think is who we saw in that picture, George Klein, Billy and Joe Smith, Patsy Presley Gamble and her husband Gigi, and Vernon and Dee Presley. Priscilla's sister Michelle was the maid of honor, and Joan, my wife, was the matron of honor. Marty and I were co-best men. So that's all the people, at least according to Joe, who was best man, that were in that room. And Luann says that Charlie Hodge, he laughs funny and it makes you laugh too. That's true. He did have a contagious laugh. Now, Marty Lacker, he says there were only a few guests present. And he names them. And here's who Marty says was in the room. George Klein and Joe Smith. So it's odd that Marty doesn't mention Billy, but he does mention Billy's wife. There's George Klein and Joe Smith, Gigi and Patsy Gamble, Colonel and Mrs. Parker, Harry Levitch. That's a different name. Joe didn't mention that the jeweler, who we've already seen as part of the story, Harry Levitch is the jeweler from Memphis who brought the wedding ring. Possibly this one. I'm thinking this is the one we saw the other day on a receipt that was like $1,400, which would be like $14,000 today. This is this double platinum band. Marty also says Mr. and Mrs. Vernon Presley were there, Major and Mrs. Ballou, and their son Donnie. And the wedding party were Joe and I as dual best men, Priscilla's sister Michelle as maid of honor, and Joan Esposito as matron of honor. So he has a very similar list, but you can see that the lists that were reported, well, they're not the same. And we have D, who said there was only 14 people here, but there's more than 14 people that are listed here. So it all depends on how you looked at it and how you count it, I guess. And Marion says, shouldn't D's sons have been in that room too? Good question, Marion. Where are the Stanley boys? That's going to come up. We're going to find out. Let me show you the back of this ring. That's the front that we're looking at. And this is the other side. No surprise, it basically looks the same. But just in case you wondered, it is the same all the way around. Colleen agrees with Marion. That's a good question. Where are the Stanleys? This is a custom-made diamond and platinum ring. So this wasn't a ring that was just sitting around on a shelf somewhere waiting for someone to get married. This was made specifically by Harry Levitch for Elvis to Elvis's specifications. So Elvis had this idea in his mind of what he wanted his ring to look like. And he told Harry, and this is what it looked like. The center row features 8 baguette, again, I don't know if I'm saying that right, baguette cut diamonds with a border of 2 rows of 8 full cut round brilliant diamonds. And this is because the number 8 was Elvis's lucky number. So I don't remember. I have read a couple of times the numerology explanation that Elvis gives to get to the number 8. He uses like an equation of some kind. I don't remember what it is, but I do actually have the text of one of the numerology books that he read. I just haven't personally read it. But I thought that might be fun for us to go through one day, is to figure out, how does this 8 apply to Elvis? Why did he like the number 7, which also appears frequently? It's just not his number. Total weight of the 24 diamonds is about 1.65 carats. So it's a lot. Hi, Linda Curtis. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. Now, we're not going to talk about where the Stanleys are right this minute, but we are going to jump forward in time to Graceland, 10 days before Elvis passed away. It's August 6th, 1977. According to David Stanley, he and his wife Angie, who were having a very difficult time in their marriage, looked like they were going to break up. This thing was going to fail. They came to Elvis for advice. They're saying, David says 10 days before Elvis passed away. Elvis gave them advice. And with that advice, he gifted them this ring, this wedding ring that Harry Levitch made, that he married Priscilla with. Now, Elvis was divorced from Priscilla at this time, obviously by August 6, 1977. So from this failed marriage of his own, he gives David Stanley this very expensive ring, and he says that he wishes it will bring them happiness in their own failing marriage. Now, sometime in the 1980s, Angie, who is no longer married to David, she still had possession of this ring, and she sold it to Jimmy Velvet. Now, we've talked about Jimmy Velvet quite a bit. He owned a museum, got a whole lot of Elvis stuff. Some of it has no provenance, meaning nobody knows how it made it from Elvis's possession into Jimmy Velvet's possession. It seems like if Elvis had gifted it to somebody, they would have been happy to attach that story to it. But for some reason, either Jimmy didn't record those stories, or he didn't wish to publicize them, or nobody knew how this piece made it over to Jimmy Velvet, even the person that brought it to Jimmy. But in this case, it was Angie, and she gave the same story that David gave. And then it ended up with Jimmy Velvet, and then it was sold in 1994 at an auction to a private collector, and then it was resold in 2006. It was placed up for auction in 2013, but I don't think it sold. It looked like it was unsold from the records, and I don't know that it's ever come up again. But it's still out there in the world somewhere. But it's out in the world because David Stanley says that Elvis gave it to him 10 days before he died. Do I have a value on the ring? Someone's asking. I do not have a value on the ring. I think it was valued at more than $100,000 to start the bids, and no one bid that much. And that's why it didn't sell. But I don't know. And Keith says that's pretty wild that Elvis would have given David Stanley the ring. A ring that had been part of a failed marriage to help a marriage that's failing. That's the part of the story that makes no sense to me. And Pat says that was one expensive ring to be lost, but it didn't get lost. And Marion says she would love to know how Elvis came to his number 8, so maybe we'll do that someday. It could be fun. And Colleen says, so was Billy telling tales, or did Elvis just say it was lost because he didn't want to wear it? Well, Elvis had it, so I think he was wearing it. I don't think there's any stories that he wasn't wearing it. I think the only people that say that he lost his ring are Billy and Priscilla, which is very odd, right? But I have another story. Somebody else who was there, and they say it wasn't Elvis's ring. There was a ring lost. And we're going to get to that in this timeline. We're just not going to get to it today. But this ring is going to resurface in the myth. And then again, it'll resurface 10 days before he dies, when he gives it voluntarily to David Stanley. And then somehow Angie ends up with it, even though it's a man's ring. And Colleen says, did he give it, or was it something that was swiped after Elvis passed? Suspect, says Chillin. And Chillin, I'm guessing you pulled this from AI. The gift was a known event among his inner circle, and the ring's authenticity and circumstances of the gift have been verified by letters of provenance from Angie Stanley and Joe Esposito. So, if we take this ring that was worth a whole bunch of money, and we don't know how much Jimmy sold it for, and then other people, when they were trying to sell it, came to Joe and people like that and said, can you authenticate this ring? Here's some money. I don't know. This is a tough one for me. But maybe it's all true. Maybe Elvis was that generous, but why would he give the ring from a failed marriage to help a failing marriage? And Linda Curtis says she thinks she heard Mindy Miller tell how they figure someone's number. I think she did too, Linda. I think she does, because she was all into that. And Pat says this is, really how interesting. Yeah, I just think, just because of the person that's involved, that's why I think it's suspect. But the reasoning just seems insane. But what do I know? And now let's look. Well, this is Elvis looking at the ring on Priscilla's finger. So this is after they're married and she is his wife. Joe Esposito says the ceremony was over in a few moments. I handed Elvis the 3-carat diamond wedding ring, and he slipped it on Priscilla's fingers. Priscilla's wedding ring was a 3-carat diamond surrounded by 20 smaller diamonds. Now, this is not Priscilla's ring. However, this is a ring. It's a bridal set. Okay, so there's actually 2 rings here. You can pull them apart, and that diamond slots into the round piece on the, like the horseshoe shape on the other piece. It's a diamond interlocking bridal set. And this piece was made to resemble Priscilla Presley's engagement and wedding band. And it was worn by the actress Susan Walters in the television movie Elvis and Me when she played Priscilla. Now, it makes sense that they didn't use the real ring in order to film that show. But why would you make something that resembles the ring and not something that looks exactly like the ring? Well, it's like it's already been alluded to in the chat. There's a ring lost at the Circle G. But as we saw, it's not Elvis's, because everybody in the inner circle appears to know that Elvis gave his ring to David Stanley. So nobody was on their knees searching for Elvis's ring in the field of Circle G. But they were searching for somebody's ring, and it was a wedding ring. And years later, when they make a movie about her, they have to make a ring that resembles her ring. Probably because there's no pictures or anything of it, other than the ones that we can see, and they just don't have enough detail. They're really pictures of Priscilla and not the ring itself. And Colleen says that, sorry, she doesn't trust the Stanleys. And Luann says that she thought Elvis threw it and couldn't find it somewhere. Seems like whoever told you that, Luann, that was a fib on their part. That's what I'm bringing out here. There's some fibbing going on. And it's odd that Priscilla and Billy grouped together on that fib. So if you remember that EFM, I am dying to find that video. And here's a picture of the happy couple at the moment of the nuptials. They're kissing for the first time as man and wife. Priscilla says, it seemed that as soon as the ceremony began, it was over. Our vows were taken. We were now husband and wife. I remember flashbulbs popping, my father's congratulations, and my mother's tears of happiness. So for Priscilla, it's over in an instant. She's been waiting for it for a long, long time. And her father and mother are there to see it. And Marion says, so Priscilla lost her ring, but is telling everyone Elvis lost his ring, right? That's what she wrote in her book. She wrote a long piece in her book about the ring that was lost, and it was certainly Elvis's, and she said it bothered her, and that she very quickly had a replica made for him so that he would have his ring. Now, Harry Levitch, he wrote that ring came with a bunch of letters of authenticity. So when Chillin found the piece that she put into the chat for us, those letters of provenance, they're with that ring. And one of them is from Harry Levitch, and it says, this is the ring I made for the wedding. It doesn't say this is a ring I made because Elvis lost his ring in the field at Circle G. It says this is the ring that he wore at the wedding that I carried to Las Vegas. Now, I've never actually seen that letter. I've just seen the ring and pictures of the ring. Obviously, I've never seen the ring either, but pictures of the ring. And I've never seen a copy of the letter. I know that it exists because it's stated as existing with the piece. And they give you a small, like a little blurb, what they are telling you it's trying to say to you. But there was a bunch of other ones, and those are the other ones that Chillin so kindly put up there for us. And Luann says that she read the article ages ago and could have been reading about something else. No, Luann, you definitely read that. And it's on an EFM video where Billy tells a long story about the handkerchief, and Elvis knots it on, and then they're racing each other, and it flies off, and they're not sure where in the field, and no one ever finds it. Well, no one ever finds Elvis's ring because it's on his finger. So nobody's looking for it. They're looking for Priscilla's ring. And I do have somebody that confirms that. So we're going to come back to that when it resurfaces in the timeline. But right now, Marty Lacker says, well, before Marty Lacker speaks, the ceremony completes. And at that moment, the violin, the string bass, and the accordion trio, they switch over and start playing Here Comes the Bride. And Elvis and Priscilla, holding hands, strode into the adjoining banquet room and received a standing ovation from their guests. So that's what May Mann saw. And what she heard. So Elvis and Priscilla have made it through the ceremony, and now they're out in the next room, the room that's right next to them, the adjoining banquet room. And they're receiving a standing ovation from everybody that's there. I'm sure it's a full room of people. And so, although there may have been enough room for the guys to have also been inside this little room, maybe there was a thought that all these other guests would feel slighted in that case. I don't know. But in this case, it's over. Because the ceremony is over, and now they're in the banquet room, and we're going to celebrate. But first, there's going to be a press conference. But that's going to be in the next episode. And I'm going to leave you guys with a song, but I'll answer some questions first. Linda Curtis says, did she pay for the ring she had made with his money? Well, I don't think she had a ring made. Linda says she's confused. Yeah, Elvis didn't lose his ring. Priscilla lost her ring. Now, did Priscilla have a new ring made? I don't think so, because when they make the movie of Priscilla for ABC, they make a simulated ring, but they're not sure it actually looks like Priscilla's ring. And I think that's because Priscilla's ring's been gone for many, many years by that point. But that's just my opinion. Entertainment show. And Keith says there's no pics with the Colonel. That's true. I have not run across any pics with the Colonel at the wedding. And so I'm going to leave you guys today with this song. Let's do His Heart's Desire, the reason he's getting married. He wants to have a wife and have kids. And you guys keep on taking care of business. And thank you so much for joining me here today for the wedding.
His time came too early, the curtain fell too fast. Before he was ready, before we could grasp the man behind the myth, the ache behind the fame. He wanted something simple, not fortune, not acclaim. "6:03, the threats came down like rain. He spoke of love, not fear, through the shadow and the strain. I wanna live to be old," he said with quiet grace, "to remember her love and see our children's face." He didn't ask for gold, didn't dream of a throne. He wanted a family, a place to call home, to be a good man with a heart that could rest, to know he was loved and he'd given it his best. No mansion in the sky, no diamond parade, just the warmth of her hand and the life they made. A whisper of laughter, a child's sleepy sigh, that was the dream he carried inside. He didn't ask for gold, didn't dream of a throne. He wanted a family, a place to call home, to be a good man with a heart that could rest, to know he was loved and he'd given it